Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of A Renewed Hope for Our National Heroes. I'm Heather Lee Flannery. I'm the co-founder and chief executive officer here at the AI Mind Systems Foundation, and I'm joined by two of my esteemed colleagues, and we're excited to be here today to talk about our work and some strategic announcements that we have. The first thing I'd like to do is just let you know a little bit about the format. This is being recorded, so no need to take furious notes. We are joining you live on multiple platforms: LinkedIn, X, YouTube, and it's an exciting time here on Monday, the 17th of 2025. So first, I'd like to offer Tom Fournier the opportunity to introduce himself. Over to you, Tom.
Great. Thanks, Heather. Happy to be here as always. And what an important day, an exciting day. Can't wait to share and introduce our new colleague. But my name's Tom Fournier. I'm currently the interim COO for AI Mind Systems and the executive director for National Hero Initiative. My career and what brought me here is really a passion for taking care of our military veterans and their families and our first responders, which is at the heart of everything we're doing in National Hero. That's supported by 23 plus years as a soldier myself and helping innovative companies and startups since I've left understand how they can better do business with the government and use their technology for the betterment of not only our soldiers, service members, but to humanity at large. Really look forward to today's discussion. So thank you for the time today.
Thanks so much, Tom. It's an honor to work with you. I'm so glad you could make it today. Thanks. And I am extremely honored and excited and thrilled to announce our newest member at AI Mind Systems Foundation, Dr. Melvin Greer, who today joins us as our Chief AI Officer. Uh, Pleased to introduce you, Mel. Over to you to tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
Well, Heather, I'm really excited about it. And while the official role with AI Mind Systems is coming off today, I have been working with you on this project for many, many years. And the primary reason for that is because healthcare uh, the application of AI, there's really no more important application. And as a practitioner, I've spent a lot of time understanding how to do things like personalized medicine and immunotherapy and how we ought to be using AI to advance drug discovery and remediation. This particular activity is very near and dear to my heart. In fact, healthcare and AI is the reason I became a data scientist in the first place, right? So my mom actually died because she didn't have the benefit of some of these advanced AI-enabled therapies. And so it encouraged and inspired me to go into data science and understand how to be better at bringing health enabled capabilities powered by AI to our industry. And of course, where do we really want to have a bias for action and stop talking so much is when we talk about supporting our veterans. These people have served our country with distinction, and we really want to be very, very focused on driving the kinds of things that are part of the Hero Initiative that we're going to talk about today. How can we ensure that not only does the veteran themselves get better, faster, more accurate, affordable health care, but as caretakers, their families that are also often very much affected by whatever is happening to them also need the kind of support that this kind of initiative can provide. And so all of the focus that I've always had on data privacy, data sovereignty, and then the ability to monetize one's data as it contributes to the wealth of the industry, and bringing that back to support the economic activities of the individual. These are critical factors that I'm extremely excited about applying to the work we do here at AI Mind Systems.
Thank you so much. It's fantastic to see years of effort come full circle to now, instead of working together on opposite sides of the table across different companies, such as your recent past role at Intel Corporation, We are now on the same leadership team together with Tom and esteemed colleagues to take up this journey. It's an amazing turn of events and a wonderful outcome. The so the first thing I'd love to do, and maybe Tom, you could kick this off a little bit. There has been a tremendous amount of progress and huge efforts made to achieve improved data portability between the Defense Health Agency and the VA, and between the VA and community care providers. So there's been major efforts, major expenditures, big programs, many good people doing great work and making strides. However, when an active duty service member moves into veteran status and moves out into community care, uh, we are aware that there are still problems to solve. And I was wondering if you might unpack a little bit of that, sort of the data foundation from the experience of the veteran and what, you yourself and friends and colleagues experience, including still quite recently with in that respect.
Well, absolutely. It's such an important piece. And frankly, it really um, comes down to the traceability and the accountability of the procedures that are being conducted throughout a service member's career, everything from going to sick call, their service members, whether they're, part of the, um, community care system there, if they're within the care system on post, or whether or not they're seeking care in the community, if they have a family member who may have special needs that are seeking other pieces, there's a significant amount of loss and data and traceability within that through the course of a career because we do end up going to a lot of different places that may be duty related, may be environmentally related, maybe, there's no secret in regards to some of the water problems we've had with base housing and some of the material problems we've had with base housing. And be able to have a traceable record and accountability of that and detection early um, really comes down to the shared information, understanding that potability of that record, that anywhere someone goes where their primary care can see in an instant what the history of that individual, the exposures they've had, the history they have behind it, and their families along with it. Because it's not just a treatment piece along with it, it comes with, in a certain affinity groups in some regards, support from your community. We have so many assets out there to serve us in our communities, whether it's mental health, counseling, just general care, getting out back in the environment and exercising and becoming more active. There are so many tools that are out there for veterans and service members and first responders and their families that will never be known at the local, state, regional, and federal level. We need areas of synergy that will create those awareness opportunities for everyone to see them, be aware of them, and participate in them. I can just give one brief example. I mean, recently I just went back for a test for something, and they had no idea where to find it. Though it was in the VA system, who had outsourced it to someone, but couldn't get it back into the system for visibility for my PCM. So that stuff should never happen. With an individual, with a data clone or some type of data representative of an individual, there is no way that anything that ever happens to you shouldn't be associated with that, with the governing and the opportunity of your own self-control to be able to opt in for studies, for research, for other things that are on you to be able to make those decisions and for you to get involved as you want. But if you don't know that they're there and you don't know what your rights are in regards to those, it's very difficult to make those decisions. So there's definitely a lot of opportunity. There's a lot of goodwill. There's amazing people in the VA doing great things every day. Our healthcare providers are heroes. They absolutely do amazing things for us. We need to give them the right tools and the ability to see and do the best they can without burning out.
Yeah, I agree with you, Tom. I think our ability to provide benefit awareness and benefit adjudication is a top priority because if we have an administration that is willing to provide these benefits, set aside budget for these benefits, develop an organization to deliver the benefits, and our veterans aren't aware that they have qualified or are capable of receiving these benefits, this is all a waste. And I really am hoping that not only can we focus on benefit awareness and adjudication, but acceleration of claims and claims processing, and the ability to, as you say, port the data record associated with healthcare across a wide variety of stakeholders. This idea of digital and physical security of the data record, as well as its portability, we really are excited about helping to create that as a top priority going forward.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, Mel and Tom. And um, in the National Hero Initiative, our aim involves outfitting individual veterans and their family members with something we call a personal data estate. And it is a technical and governance and even legal construct to create formal empowerment of the person through taking custody of the information about them. The implication is that all of these business and clinical and scientific processes that are about people can become processes that are instead with people. And by having a corresponding technological infrastructure of one's own, that means something really significant. Because if you have a data infrastructure of your own, it means you can also use AI for yourself, for your own aims, not only to be influenced and affected by other parties' AI acting upon you, but as an individual to directly benefit from what AI can do for you without any conflicts of interest with any external party. One of the things I'd love if you could unpack for a moment as our chief AI officer are the implications of what could be done with what we call self-sovereign AI, where a veteran or a veteran's caregiver or family member is able to have not only their medical record, but all of the huge diversity of data about themselves brought under their own custody. What kind of optimizations and complexity might be possible that any of us as natural intelligences would barely have the ability or the logistic capacity to take on? What do you think
Imagine
about
if we
that?
had a national healthcare ecosystem that a veteran could operate inside of. This ecosystem would allow the veteran from active duty to outside of active duty create a mechanism for moving their data from military hospital to commercial hospital that would provide them an opportunity to participate actively in drug discovery specific to their own DNA. It might provide them a historical record of healthcare, so it could have a predictive nature to predispositions that they might be associated with. It
Mhm.
certainly would provide them and their family an opportunity to engage this ecosystem at various levels in their local and state environments, at the national level, and even in the commercial environment, in a way where they have complete control over who's doing what with their data and how that data is going to be used to support them. So this is a earth-shattering change. It's very disruptive, but it's absolutely necessary because absent of that, all of the goodwill that we have in creating these silos of healthcare for the veteran, they become less effective. They create very, very difficult impediments for the veterans and their families to be able to figure out where to go when. And it inhibits the healthcare provider component of the ecosystem from being able to deliver the best possible care. I think the example that Tom gave is one that's absolutely critical, right? If I go to my physician I don't want that person or the nurse practitioner or the surgeon or the anesthesiologist not to have a 100 or 360-degree view of my record. I want them to know, that I have an allergy to cats. I want them to know all the idiosyncratic things about my health so that I can now get the benefit of the best service that our nation can provide. And I tell you, this uncompromised root of trust activity that we've been talking about in terms of data sovereignty is a critical factor because if the veteran is not empowered or enabled to manifest control over their data and health record, it impedes their ability to optimize it for all of these great use cases we just described. So being able to deliver a root of trust and data sovereignty associated with this data for the control of the veteran as it moves in and out of various elements of the ecosystem. This is exactly what we're trying to achieve. And if we can do it for the veteran, well, you know where we're going next. we we want to do this on a much larger scale. So I think it's really important that we can consider how these use cases, as it manifests itself across the military ecosystem, operate.
No, the thing I really love about the part that you talked about in regards to the earth, earth-shattering pieces and how well it's much it's needed now. The last piece of that is that it's also feasible right now. The Moore's law has never been more irrelevant than right now in regards to we are moving so fast in our abilities to actually achieve these things on scale and in a way that is meaningful. We're looking at national ecosystems. You're talking about DNA pilot studies. Wouldn't it be great to be able to opt into something and say, these are the things that I have when I left service. These are the things that and actually be proactively contacted and said, "Did you know that there's a study going on at this university right now that is specifically addressing your, skin condition that popped up at a fob, you and 10 of your folks. You were on the ladder truck at 9/11 and you all have respiratory problems. Did you know that everyone in that cohort now has respiratory problems because of their exposure?" Can you imagine a system that proactively does that? It's feasible because you know why? If I look for a fishing pole, Mel, you better believe I'm going to get posted a fishing pole every time I log in forever. So if someone else can opt in, watch me passively and determine my shopping records, why can't we actively and proactively do this for the benefit of informing people of their medical rights? Did you know there's a PTSD study in your neighborhood, TBI, family support, anything from Havana syndrome for the State Department to toxic exposure from different overseas bases, but also our own bases here. I mean, Camp Lejeune had plenty of problems long ago. We could have traced those things early. We could have identified them early, treated them early, and prevented a lot of sickness. Probably prevented a lot of lawsuits, a lot of loss to the government for money, work, sickness, stress on families. These are examples of places where we could identify things and quell outbreaks. We could provide services much earlier. Now we have that technology now, and it's not just for capitalism and selling us stuff and watching our habits. It's ways to reverse that in a way that's meaningful, that can really make a difference in a family's life and longevity of happiness, peace, and quality of life.
Yeah, I think the
I-
thing that's most interesting for me is AI mind systems. Right from the very beginning, we've built this concept on a foundation of ethical and responsible AI use. And so it really is incumbent upon not only us as practitioners, but all AI practitioners to think about the ethical and responsible component of what we're talking about. Because, Tom, your point is absolutely well taken. There are opportunities for these kinds of things to be available now. But the thing that I'm concerned about is you finding out that everybody found out about your fishing pole. That really wasn't a very ethical use of that concept, right? It wasn't really as responsible as it could be. It didn't offer you explicit consent. It didn't provide you a mechanism for monetizing this ability for them to know about what you're doing. And so this idea of ethical and responsible overlay of AI systems is part of the core DNA of AI mind systems. It's the primary. I know I love the work that we've been doing, Heather, but I will say it's the primary reason why I've decided to join AI mind systems in this endeavor.
Well, your passionate commitment and advocacy for people everywhere to be included, included in the upsides and to the extent we can possibly predict them, protected from the downside risks of AI is meaningful and something we're intensely aligned on. You know, there's a in something that you were saying, Tom, there's a premise kind of built into the discussion when we think about optimizing matching of resources to needs. We tend to think about it through an institutional boundary. Like, for example, what resources has the VA assembled to get those resources to veterans? Or what resources does a single nonprofit have, and how to effectively get those resources to veterans? Something that is a little bit subtle but important in our model is that when a veteran is empowered with this new self-sovereign, person-sovereign technology stack, the implication is that it's no longer about what a single institution can do for a single veteran, but rather matching um, potentially thousands of resources. And as we look at population health and individual clinical medicine as well, we know that what happens in healthcare delivery is actually a fairly modest fraction of the health outcomes of a person or a community. And that social, environmental, and occupational determinants of health, mental health status, financial, the degree to which a person is at any risk of poverty and all of its sequela, those factors have a very large cumulative effect on the health outcomes of people and communities. This model allows us to come up in altitude, including healthcare, but moving far beyond healthcare to be able to match individual people with full privacy preservation to the resources that might be available from them through the entire private and philanthropic safety net of our generous nation. More than 30,000 nonprofits have resources that they are committed to having benefit veterans, to our very robustly funded public social safety net programs, to everything that commercial businesses wish to provide that may be useful. So this kind of matching of resources to need is something that far exceeds what any one organization could possibly do, because that one organization controls a set of resources, whereas a person-centered apparatus can connect to all, and trusted privacy-preserving AI can orchestrate across an indefinite number of data points that no one human being could do. Tom, do you have a couple of examples of how combining improvements in healthcare delivery with improvements in cultural, social, emotional support structures can have an enormous effect that goes far outside the boundary of what any government agency could do?
I'd just like to say that right now, when you're talking about connecting social systems, veteran suicide rates are 34.7% per 100,000, which is nearly double the non-veteran rate.
Yes.
That's got to soak in, and that is for a litany of different reasons. We look at this as, if we look at it systematically, typically, and I won't touch too much on this, but typically when someone is getting ready to leave service, they go to a veteran service organization or veteran support organization that, that helps them with their claim, helps them understand their medical records, helps them with all that. All of these are dependent on how up to date, how good these individuals are. And there is a wide disparity in regards to quality and efficacy and all the different pieces that go into it. But you could not you could take the same person and put them through 10 different VSOs and come out with different claims, different things, different orchestration of what their actual package may look like. So systematically standardizing that with an agent and making sure it's consistency and fair across the board. You take recent articles in the Washington Post, for example, and you cut those down and show how systematically across the board veteran benefits are applied. You ensure that there's a record of everything that's supportable from across, and the amount of people that are in that system to in that evaluation process can be limited based off of there's now agents and consistency. When someone leaves, there should be no debate about it. I shouldn't have to print out 700 pages of hard paper or download a CD to send to somebody to prove that my whole medical history is there. It should be a running estimate throughout my entire career and of the things that I'm being exposed to, the surgeries, whatever I'm having as it goes. So the day it's almost calculate at the end, equal sign. It should just be here's where you are and let's certify it rather than start from scratch. When we talk about the agents across, every doctor, depending on where they go to medical school, has certain protocols that they go through. Why every time that we have to go to a doctor that we have to start from scratch? Well, I'm going to order these labs. I'm going to order this scan. I'm going to order this to the order of magnitude of probably millions and millions of dollars a year in redundant testing that active duty didn't talk to VA. You had an MRI a month ago, but I didn't get a VA. I didn't get an MRI from you, so I want an MRI, and I want it with contrast, or I want it with these different things. So the consistency across the board, everywhere we go, to Mel's point of a national ecosystem where you could go. And now they know your whole system. Now you can rule out some unnecessary testing. You can rule out certain things because that's what the protocols and procedures are for, is to rule out certain things. So if I had tests within the last 6 months that change isn't a rapid change, you can eliminate some of those things right off the bat. AI agents can also help doctors make some inferences there, can connect some dots on some things as well as they're going through. We've tried all these things. Here's some other things that it could possibly be. Here's some other things that, you may want to look at. Or did you also know when we add their environmental pieces, hey, they're having this, but this also matches 10,000 other people who have symptoms that serve in the same location or who use this same equipment, or for firefighters, we're actively, testing these PFAS, type, drills and exercises that they were exposed to. There's so many things that we connect these to things to right now that can not only just save money, save time, but increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the medicine, the tests, the procedures that we're going through right now.
Yeah, and I know we've talked about this idea as a national health data initiative and ecosystem, but Tom, to reinforce your point, I think one of the most important determinants about the quality of healthcare is your zip code. And so, in a very real sense, the delivery of quality healthcare may be outside anything that has to do with the healthcare delivery system itself, right? So this is the reason why we have to extend beyond healthcare and think about not only mental health, but is there a food insecurity? Is there a housing issue that may be at play? Are there other economic determinants that we need to associate with this record that are going to help inform what kind of services we need? Because it doesn't matter if we cure diabetes if the person doesn't have any food to eat, can't have a place to sleep, doesn't have the proper place to live. So it is really important to think about the non-health specific determinants of the delivery of quality health care. And this is the reason why this National Hero Initiative is so important, because it is going to bring together all of these things, as Heather said, in a human centric activity, because there's no way that a veteran going to the VA alone, as an example, could get all of the benefits that are available to them to solve some of these social services issues. And so It really is going to have to cut across U.S. military, non-military, philanthropic activities, non-profits, a whole host of connective tissue in order to really take a look at how we're going to give the care to the people who are making it possible for us to live in a free society, right? So this is the thing so thank you for your service, Tom. My father was a veteran in the Army, but when I think about um, how difficult some of the impediments that really are in the face of veterans getting the quality health care they need. This is what is energizing me, and I'm sure you and Heather, to say, hey, you know what? We really ought to bring our mind share together to solve this, whether it's a pure healthcare issue or it's a socioeconomic issue that is, impacting healthcare.
Mhm. There's a couldn't agree more. And one of the things I want to surface or touch on a little bit is about how there are certain kinds of data that have such an elevated risk and such potential for misuse were they to be stolen or breached, that the ability to develop responsible or ethical AI programs around that kind of data is rightfully fraught because the risk is very real. Mel, earlier you mentioned genetic data and precision health and what is possible with precision health. And at AI Mind Systems Foundation, we talk about vectors of precision around the person, of which health is one, but education is another, and social support and economic success is another. This opportunity to use precision personalization is an extraordinary potential empowerment for all people. But I'd like to talk a little bit about genomic data specifically and other biometric data. And what are, for example, we've got the NIH All of Us study, major centralization of full sequence human genomes. We have the Million Veteran Program, or MVP, that is seeking to get to the full sequence human genomes of 1 million veterans, which is such a laudable cause, but to place them in a centralized data structure. Our focus on decentralized AI across self-sovereign data has a different kind of risk dynamic. Could you unpack a little bit more about what that means and what a departure it is from the genomic programs that are sponsored by nations around the world in progress today?
Yeah, so no, I get it, right? So the ability to acquire and store and centralized omic data, genomic data, DNA, phenotype, genotype, all of these mechanisms that help identify the DNA structure of an individual is exciting, right? And it is really enticing to say, let's put it all in a central database and let's see if we can run some really great unsupervised learning or some agentic AI or your flavor du jour and see if we can't uncover some really great things. But of course, this concept misses the fact that this is unlike financial data where we can, if somebody steals your money, just give you money back. It's not like education data where if we steal that and somebody slots you in a genius program when you're supposed to be held back a year, we can fix that. We are not going to be replacing your genetic makeup, and we're certainly not going to be in a position to once compromised be able to figure out how to pull it back, even if it was even if it was uh, encrypted, anonymized. I mean, there's all these security constructs that people are talking about. I think this this idea of a root of trust we've been talking about inside a blockchain capability that the veteran controls. This is where we are making a differentiator from the commercial entities that are out there in terms of the aggregation and analysis of DNA, RNA, mRNA, and omic data. Our goal is not only to protect the industry from fraud, waste, and abuse of the data that the veteran provides, but to provide the veteran a mechanism for auditing, maintaining some sort of control, and evaluating how this data is actually being used. And so this is a substantively different mechanism that we are doing than the rest of the healthcare community. And what it requires, of course, is two things. And this is something that we've discussed at length, Heather. One, we need to get veterans more aware of the value proposition of their data, right? We absolutely have to have some sort of education program because today, most people say, okay, I signed my HIPAA form, so that's it. And, they think that there's some protection there, when in fact, that's not what we're really talking about, right? We're really talking about understanding, as you mentioned, the risk profile and the value proposition of the data set, the data type, and the data fusion, right? And in addition to that, besides the education, we have to change the incentive model. Because right now, the incentive is not focused on the individual, that is incentivizing them to participate because we understand the value of their data and we're going to compensate them for it. That's not the model that we currently have. And so if we change it to that model, what happens is that the systems reorient themselves in the form that it's best to serve the individual. And it's this ability to reorient themselves that we're trying to accelerate at AI Mind Systems and drive toward a mechanism where we have a deeper distributed ledger, immutable capability inside a root of trust that allows for a complete control by the individual.
Hmm. Hmm.
I recently taking my son for a his annual checkup was had to sign forms that basically said that I was signing away his data and any material that was gathered for the company, or he couldn't get his checkup. Why are those connected? Why is that an opt-in or opt-out piece? It was connected as this or that. Either you give consent or don't get a checkup. And it wasn't separated. It wasn't do you opt into research or studies? It was clearly stated that I had to give my consent for his data and his any material gathered.
Was that infinitum, Tom?
I'm sorry?
Is that in posterity forever? I mean, was there any time frame associated with that?
There was no time frame. There was no time.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, all right. So I gave permission, had the checkup, and then immediately removed the permission, which I guess that's a loophole they didn't foresee. But if veterans or anything, we're clever. One thing that I always hear, it's interesting to this, is that using our genetic material for waste for companies to deny health insurance and or life insurance claims, or even reasonable amounts. Have you heard any arguments in that case? I've heard that from a couple organizations I've spoke to in regards to their fear of that, that their constituents or members of their organizations would be denied health insurance because of pre-existing conditions, and they're concerned about these these data, medical data forms where they could possibly be highlighted as a high risk for either health insurance or for
Well,
life
not
insurance.
only health insurance, life insurance, employment, there's a whole series of things that could be eradicated or be evaluated based on the genetic health record. This movie Gattaca is one my wife says, why am I so enamored with it? Because it shows a potential future where we have this kind of adjudication. But I think what was really interesting about your example is that it shows that we have still a long way to go in terms of being able to help incentivize the focus of the healthcare industry on healthcare that benefits the veteran or the individual.
Mhm.
as opposed to one that is protecting liability or driving revenue opportunities for drug discovery and remediation. It would be very different, of course, if we had a healthcare or privacy set of laws, right? So there are a number of countries that do, right? In Canada, they have a data protection law and they have a data privacy law that helps adjudicate whether or not data can be used for any other purpose for other than what it was intended when it was collected, whether that data is available to people who didn't collect the data in the first place. And then we would have this concept of explicit consent, where I'm saying, okay, you know what? If you want to take my checkup and you want to specifically use it to help the Heart Association develop remediation for um, hypertension or heart disease, okay, I'm okay with that. Or no, I'm not okay with it. At least we would have some sort of backstop that said, you know what, if things get out of hand, I can at least have this adjudicated through the courts. And that's the reason why this distinction between security, which is kind of an IT thing, and privacy, which is a legal thing, needs to be made clear and how they intersect to help the individual, in this case the veteran, deal with the way their data is handled.
There's some very interesting laws being passed in Europe right now where you could use as a benchmark, and certainly some studies in regards to you cannot separate the individual from their data. And there's some interesting laws being passed right now in those cases. I'd love to explore some of those and just see which ones certainly apply to us or could apply to us in regards to coming up with some options or generating some baseline changes within that institutional framework. It could be interesting as a starting point or a reference point, but there's definitely some movement internationally for some of these protections that we could probably institute ourselves or at least use as a foundation.
Indeed, Tom, our position at AI Mind Systems Foundation is that personal data is inseparable from personhood in modernity. And I do mean the legal concept of personhood. And we have right now very conservatively, actually, this isn't right now, as of 2023, there was a $111.9 billion trade in personal data. That means data that has a human subject. And if you subscribe to the premise that because we cannot genuinely opt out of existing in a massively digital society, and because it is impractical or deeply punishing for us to disengage from the substrate of how our entire society works, it means that that personal data, if it is part of us, if it is part of us, it cannot be sold. It should not be sold any more than organs should be bought and sold, or people should be bought and sold. This implication means that there are just and fair uses, and there are economic models that apply to how a person monetizes their know-how, their ability, their labor. It's called labor law. And it's very well established. But that implicates that the transactional structure for uses as secondary uses of personal data need to look more like renting, leasing, engaging. But to your point, Tom, never is it severable from the person themselves. It cannot be. The information about you can never cease to be or have been the information about you. And in this implication, I want to unpack a little bit more about the the divide between how we do privacy, quote unquote, the work that we do to achieve privacy, and what the reality is today about the ability to compromise the privacy and dignity of pretty much all of us. And so when we talk about this trade in data, very often it is anonymized or pseudonymized or de-identified, and they're very granular distinctions and context-specific details about what that means in practice. But those methods and practices were developed several generations of technology ago, and they worked back in the day. It has been known for quite some time that they don't work anymore. Mel, maybe you could share a little bit of with our audience about how um, our over reliance on classic methods of de-identification don't get it done in the world of big data anymore.
Yeah, I think, as you mentioned, there's a common understanding, at least among practitioners, that these antiquated ways of trying to um, ensure that data is not usable by any unauthorized parties have some flaws and weaknesses that have been exploited by not only individuals, but of course nation states as well. So it's really important now to think more clearly about more modern ways of dealing with that, so that we can ensure this actual privacy we're talking about. And those modern ways we would expect inside a blockchain kind of environment that has provided us a mechanism for immutable security, and that would allow us to then provide a level of privacy that the current um, more traditional ways are unable to do. I think this is the reason why we constantly thinking about how we upgrade and provide better digital and physical security around this data set, and then of course inform policymakers about how to create the policies that in fact extend that into a legal realm.
Mhm. You know, in your example that you provided about your son's physical, Tom, and the get the physical, give the data, that's the only transactional structure available. Um, it Everything in our world functions that way today. You either share the data or you don't share the data. It is black and white. In our model, we have entirely new potentials to prove things cryptographically that never require the underlying data to be shared at all. So to Mel's point, that's now a thousand shades of gray. It's degrees of optionality. It's specificity in the context, the timing, the purpose, the party using the information, and whether they're using it with full knowledge or they're using it with zero knowledge and obtaining an output or a verifiable finding. Can you speak a little bit to some of the social, cultural, emotional circumstances that might cause an active duty service member or a veteran to be reluctant to engage with safety net or healthcare um, delivery infrastructures due to concerns about the implications of privacy and whether their privacy would be protected?
Well, I know for several service members, there's always a concern of whether it's promotion or whether it's just their status within the military of certain things, whether it's migraines, whether it is mental health, or there's certain elements that they're concerned about a stigma culturally of something that would cause them to be less likely to achieve their next positions. So culturally, anything that could possibly come back. Some people go and seek treatment outside the military system for that reason, that they'd rather it be anonymous or it be to the point where they're not tracked so that they could seek some of those things without achieving the stigma. And I would think culturally that could be a problem. Though we've talked about it for years, that there is no stigma in getting help, there is no stigma and whatnot. But um, I, whether that is true, I think it is still is. there's a belief that there is a stigma that comes along with some of that treatment. So I would imagine culturally there would be concerns internally that seeking help that could be tracked, traced, and part of a transparent ecosystem could be could come at under some scrutiny from some service members and concerns about what that could lead back to.
Our our diseases of despair that results in suicidality and among veterans, to your point, at a rate that doubles that's double the general population in the United States. These diseases of despair all have shame at their root,
Mhm.
all have experiences of humiliation. And to the extent that we could create a shield for that shame, a shield for the humiliation that allowed people in profound despair to be able to access help. That to me is one of the most moving and incredible things that we could achieve with the advanced privacy preserving technology that we focus on here.
Yeah, Heather, and I think the reason this is so important is not only because it's going to help veterans, but when we don't help veterans, it has a material impact on society at large. Because veterans aren't just in some one community all by themselves, they're all over our country. And
Mhm.
when they suffer, when they feel disenfranchised, when they feel the shame and inability to get access to the services that they've earned, it has a material impact in a much more broad way than just themselves, even their families. It's going to affect their churches and schools. It'll affect what they can do in the community and how that operates. And so this is our top priority. And I've said this before. I'm going to continue to say we have to develop a bias for action in a way that is material and that is substantive, so that we can move off of the great discussions that our practitioners and our policymakers and our administration leaders have had, and really do some things that are going to have a material impact to benefit them, and then of course all of us.
Well, you hit on the families, Mel, and I think that that's one of the pieces we talk a lot about it, but it's really, I mean, very few careers involve a complete and total upheaval of an entire family unit every few years to different locations, different, they may have a kid may have a therapist that they really like, but then they have to move to somewhere else and they don't like them. They don't have that consistency and that piece. But in regards to the suicide piece, I feel like the education of the family of what the service member may be going through, whether it's TBI or PTSD or some type of event, even with law enforcement for a lethal engagement. How does the family get trained? What resources do the families have in response to be living with someone who is suffering with PTSD, suffering with TBI? Because a lot of the studies show that the family takes it on themselves, or they just if the person's hiding it from themselves, they can be the first ones to be the ones that notice it. You're different. You're not the same, by shades and measures and degrees. They can tell whether you are going down that slope, your restlessness and your sleep patterns. And typically the family members, if they understand the signs, symptoms, and some of the behavioral changes, they can be some of the first lines of defense in ideation, but also can have a better understanding that it's not about them. It's not about the relationship. It's not about the family. It's about this person's sick. This person they need to get help. Then we need to get over that stigma that the brain's a muscle. It is a very adaptive muscle. If you broke your leg, that's okay because everyone understands you can't work if you got a broken leg. But if your brain has overcompensated for certain things or is responding to certain emotions and being triggered by certain things, the family can understand that, and now they're part of the solution rather than feeling like mom and dad is just they're mad at me or I'm not good enough or why it helps the spouses communicate, it helps the children, and it helps that whole wraparound. That's why as part of this, that education of the family and making sure that they understand the resources they have for education, ideation, and the actual applied solutions that they could possibly have, I think is so important because I think they hold a very huge part of the suicide equation, the mental and physical health equation post-service, during service and post-service, and educating them and understanding what their resources are, I think is critical, a critical piece to attacking this.
Yes. We are looking at in our person sovereign apparatus, we are creating the ability to have individuals join into family units that can be represented, can receive services, and can have differential type of privacy rules, even among family members as needed, and for families to join into communities and affinity groups and engage and support. Also with that, those degrees of privacy granularity that can enable some of that. Um, Really exciting. I'd love to give each of you an opportunity to make a closing remark, and then I will close this down. I can't believe how fast this conversation has gone. My goodness.
Well, I'm just excited to be working with you, Tom and Heather. I mean, I think this is a very important activity. It's going to have a material impact on people that I know that we as a nation care about. One thing that we have maybe just talked about around, but that I'm particularly interested in driving is to determine if we can, in fact, imbue AI systems with the kind of empathy that we know it's going to take in order to make the kind of systems run the way we really want them to. Today, we don't have that, but this is something that I really am looking very much forward to working on.
Thank you, Mel. What an incredible and important goal. And it's such an honor to have you join us on this journey. And Tom.
I echo the response. I mean, it's an exciting time. I'm looking forward to where we can go and how close we are. I'm getting our frameworks together and squared away. I think that too long we have spoken about if we only had, if we could only, if we could do this, or if this could happen. And I think we're at the point where that conversation doesn't hold water anymore. We have the means, we have the ways to be able to synchronize health and make meaningful connections, reduce redundancy, ensure that people are informed and educated about not only their opportunities for health collaboration, um, for health certainty and security and governance in a way that's meaningful and respectful of them, their choices, their decisions. We talk about it all the time, but we forget that science and technology is caught up. And there are good people who are out there who are trying to apply the humanist approach to the future, which is now. And I think that is where we stand at the crossroads right now of some very exciting times. We need to get to our legislators. We need to give them the options. We need to get them the opportunities to see what is possible, not just a discussion of future, but what is possible now. And that's why it's so exciting about what we can do for this community. Thanks.
It sure is, Tom. It's incredibly exciting. Thank you very much for all of your contributions now and going forward in this program. Well, with that, I'd like to invite anyone who is inspired by our work at AI Mind Systems to visit aimindsystems.org. That's AI-mind, M-I-N-D, for my individual networked data, systems.org. Visit, get involved, and you are able to donate in fiat currency or crypto or volunteer with us. And we welcome all of your support. And thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mel. It's been wonderful today. And until next time, this has been a renewed hope for our national heroes.